welcome to the Stanley Street Social podcast presented by the TAC. The road belongs to us all. My name is Alex Clements, and I'm very excited today to be joined by Melbourne Football Club captain Max Gawn. Welcome, Max.
Thanks, Alex.
And the 2011 Tour de France winner, Cadel Evans. Welcome, Cadel.
Oh, thanks for having me. And Max and Alex, pleasure to speak with you. And then sort of, I suppose we're an ex-pro, nearly made it to pros, and someone well into their realm and in the peak of their career, but in a completely different sport. It's I think we have is that a balanced perspective or just a really skewed?
No, it's a good balance. I was going to introduce him as the 2010 La Flèche Wallonne winner, Alex.
Well, there's about 4 or 5 others introductions that we could have run with. Cadel, do you support an AFL team?
So I grew up in New South Wales when it was VFL. When I moved to Melbourne and we had high school PE or whatever, we're playing footy, and I'm like rugby, right? No, and then I've looked at the goalpost and I'm like, what the hell? There we go. What do you do here? This was my introduction to. This is in 1988, 1989, Year 7 PE. And that sort of put me off. That put me off what was then Aussie rules. I say, let's speak as Aussie. That put me off Aussie rules for a while, to be honest. Also being an endurance sport, and I'm sort of the Steve Prefontaine sort of story. High school sports didn't suit me. And so it sort of put me off it for a while. But I was a bit of an admirer of St Kilda and Tony Lockett, actually. And I don't know, does he ride now?
He does. He's actually lost a lot of weight and is down to almost a climber type weight.
Really. Just funnily enough, and I just by chance, and I started following that. And then a few years later, I had a knee injury, actually. And Max, you know well about this, ACLs and things.
Yep.
And the Geelong football, I moved down to Barwon Heads, and and I had a knee injury, and the Geelong Football Club reached out to me and said, "Oh, look, we can help you if you want. Come in and see us if you need some help." And no one's going to know about ACLs more than an AFL club, and so I got to know them. And I got to know above all Cameron Ling and Tom Harley most of all. Tom was probably the first guy I got to know a bit, but on the inside of the team and the training, the strategy, and the specificity that they had to just little tiny what for me would just seem like details. And that really, really completely changed my mindset. And it just amazed me, of course, the professionalism, the specific amount of training they did for like the free when you're floating in the air, which is something in cycling we try not to do any training or any practice for, because they had a gymnast who used to come in and train them for like how to fly through the air, so to speak. Just little things like that just amazed me. And then, but what really amazed me, what I think cycling could really take from AFL and a lot of other team sports is the unity and the team aspect, but knowing every other of your teammates so well, because in cycling we don't actually get a chance to do that because we only come together as a team when we race. Now we race a lot, but you also come together under pressure. You don't have time to drill and practice, and if you have a chance to win the tour, you're going to have a team that's dedicated to it. Well, if you have a chance to win the tour, you hope you've got a team that's dedicated to it. So maybe you'll have 1 or 2 days team time trial camp. You have a training camp at the start of the year where you're all together, but it's also media, photos, bits and pieces. I've often gone to a training camp at the start of the year, and the next time I saw a teammate was either at the tour or at the team meeting at the end of the year. Because you do race whole season, you don't see a couple of your teammates. And so that was sorry, to answer your question, I became a bit of a Geelong guy, thanks because of the help that they gave to me, and but I became a real had a whole change of perspective in the whole professionalism and athleticism of AFL footballers.
Geelong Melbourne's a chance for grand final this year, Cadel.
They are. I've been so out of it. I haven't been back since the last time I was in Australia. I was on the plane to leave from the 2020 edition of my race. So I'm so out of the loop. Well, you'll have to update me after the show.
Yeah.
All you need to know, Cadel, is the D's, led by Max Gawn, are on fire.
Great point, Alex.
Thank you. You wouldn't believe how far I'm out of the loop on those things. I probably should subscribe to some Victorian newspapers. Actually, I read the Guardian for my Australian news.
The team element that you mentioned before, Cadel, was something that I think I find really interesting, and something that Campbell also experienced as well. Campbell and myself were lucky enough to be in that team environment of the AAS, where you had six athletes and 4 support staff. You work with them for the entire year. You become best mates, or at least very, very good mates with the majority of the team. And I think that really translates into something special when you're actually winning races. And then Campbell, I never went pro. Campbell went pro into the pro ranks, and like he talked about, he's got teammates that he hardly even knows. He sees them at the team camp at the end of the year, and that could be it. What shape? Looking at 2011, what shaped that team that made it special, that made that team come together?
Or maybe it's what I learned from AFL that helped shape that. No, mostly I think we were in terms of on the road, our strength was in our unity. Not so much we weren't great in the mountains and so on, but we had a core team going into the tour. And well, just going back from 2010, we had the yellow jersey in the tour. Idiot here had a stupid crash. I think I was taken out from behind or something. There's something happened. I fell on my elbow. I didn't know it, but I broke my elbow. I didn't know. I got back on my bike and riding to the finish, and I'd taken more than 2 minutes on contender on this cobbled stage the previous day. And I rode into the yellow jersey. The next day I went and had an x-ray, and you've got a broken arm. I've got the yellow jersey at the Tour de France. I'm not going to stop, am I? We were in a great position to win the Tour de France in 2010. So that was sort of a bit of a basis behind it. But because we didn't win it, we weren't favourites and things. But 2011, we started the season. We were at the training camp, doing our training, doing our bits and pieces. I think there was a quiet confidence amongst ourselves. And when you have someone like George Hincapie, he's ridden, I think alongside it with 10 Tour de France winners, like he's been on 10 Tour de France winning teams. When he's confident, everyone's confident. It's like, he knows a lot more about this than I do. So no matter who you are in the team, if he's confident and happy, no one's got any reason not to be. So that was sort of the start of it. And then we went to the first races of the year. We went to Tirreno Addico and we won. We went to Tour of Romandy and we won. I went to Catalunya and we didn't win. Anyway, then we went to Dauphiné Libre, and I was struggling with allergies that year, I remember, but it was coming together, and there was a few things went wrong, and it was one time I remember splitting the crosswind or whatever. But anyway, nearly every time we came together, we were winning. And then we went to the tour, and things just started going well, but we just were slowly not quite. We had a real quiet confidence about us, and it wasn't like we're coming here to win the tour. We're just here. We're just to do a job. We know we all want to do our best, and everyone, I think, we sort of didn't need to speak too much about ourselves, because by then we'd been together and people knew me. I knew the other guys. I was sort of looking out for their back. They were looking out for me, and everyone knew exactly what they had to do. And what gave me the probably the final going into the tour was I was going off to do my altitude training camps and do my course reconnaissance and all these things. And of course, we organised the team time trial training and so on. Everyone's, yep, I'm going to be there. And but then everyone went off and did their own altitude camp. A couple of the guys went off together with their families. I think Quinciato took his partner, and George and his wife went up to Livigno, and so they could have their families and things. And I was off in some mountaintop place in Switzerland that I used to go to. But everyone sort of went off and did their own training camp, and no one was asked to. But it was sort of like, I got the feeling it's like no one wants to fall short here, but because we had this kind of it was just what I feel was a really healthy, strong way to build confidence. Because I as a team leader, I never wanted to put pressure and expectations on people, because I didn't like having pressure and expectations on myself. But if you can help people along the way and help them to get the best out of themselves, they're going to help you. They're going to want to help you back. And then you create a nice, you look out for me, I look out for you, and we all look out for each other's back. And if everyone in the team's doing that for each other, all of a sudden you've got this great, union, I suppose. And it started there.
Do you ever say, as a GC rider, Cadel, on which teammates you take to the tour? Because looking at that 2011 tour team in particular, and albeit that mighty last stage where you had to chase the selects yourself, there probably wasn't a really good mountain domestique for you in that team. So is that your choice, or is that BMC?
It's my choice. On one thing is my position in BMC, especially in the first years, not so much in the last few years, but my opinion counted a lot in. Of course, you have rider selection for the tour, but you've only got your riders on your team to choose from. So you've got to be looking out for riders to get for 1 or 2 years' time to get to recruit onto the team, which is easier said than done. And that's where the difficulty in cycling, having a good mountain domestique, is. Most of the guys who are good enough to be there in the final in the mountains are riding for GC themselves.
Yeah.
So just to find a good climber who's going to commit to you is already difficult. And that's where Brailsford's done such a great job at Ineos, having such great riders, but having such great riders commit to the cause of the team rather than ride for themselves. And certainly we had our best climbers in the team, but we didn't have anyone in the team who could climb with when there's only 10 guys left at the tour. So sort of that's the way it went. I think that day where I had to chase back to the group on the day I had to stop and change my bike. Come to think of it, the guy who I bridged to get to the back of the group that was in front was Sam Sanchez. 2 years later, he was my teammate, but then of course he wasn't at the level that he was then either. But to get those riders, it's actually that's a really difficult task. To have a guy who can win the tour is one thing. To have a guy who can be there, who's nearly good enough to win the tour, but will commit to the cause of someone else, that's something very difficult and expensive.
Yeah.
Max, do you have a George Hincapie at Melbourne right now? Excited, confident?
It was Jordan Lewis. The guy who's been there and done that was our Jordan Lewis, who's recently retired. But we're all quite young. It's almost me at the moment, and I've only played in 2 or 3 finals, so it's astonishing that could almost be me. Jake Lever's played in the grand final. He has a fair bit of experience in that era as well. But every time I look back at that 2011 team, Cadel, I'm amazed at most likely the team unity was the part that got you guys over the line, rather than all 9 riders being absolute stars in itself. So it's quite different to the Ineos or the Jumbo Visma today. It's almost like Pogacar last year was sort of out on his own a little bit and didn't really have a lead domestique to get him over the line. So it then leads me to that next question. Do you reckon Pog needs a good team to come up against Jumbo and Ineos?
Yeah, I think no, you've observed it well. Where I was watching Pog ride the tour last year, I was like, oh, this is. Finally, the manager there was Alan Piper, who later became a BMC manager after my period at BMC. Now looks after the Pog. But I looked at it, I was like, that's just kind of what we did. Hang there to hang close and go in the last time trial and make the time. I didn't expect Pog to be able to make that kind of gap to Pog. I didn't expect Pog to make that gap to Rog, but anyway, that's another discussion. But certainly, I think for Pog, as you refer to him, I think that's a great name for him, because his first and last name are kind of hard to get your mouth around, aren't they? I think he's going to find it a bit different this year, because he's going to be the guy that's looked at. When you've got the number 1 on your back, the whole peloton looks at you differently. And they've had some recruitments, and say Mark Hirschi, who was involved in the crash on the first day, that's going to be a real loss for him, because that's a guy who can be there at least on the flats and some of the middle mountains. When he gets into the big mountains, I think that's where we're going to see us really turn things around, which is because the first 2 days haven't gone quite as well as they wanted to. I'm assuming.
Yep.
What was your take on the carnage of the first day, Cadel? And also, can you try and articulate what I imagine is one of the most stressful scenarios in sport, the first day of a Tour de France, in a group of riders riding through Brittany, one of the tightest, toughest terrains to conquer?
Yeah. The roads are very narrow there. That's the main thing. There's a lot of well, I suppose Brittany's not so bad because there's not much gutter in there. So if you go off the road, you're in the dirt and in the grass, which isn't so bad, because if you're in the gutter and lampposts and things, they hurt. They end your season. But the first week of the tour, it's very nervous. But where do I start with this? To ride the first week of the tour is, you just got to get through it. That's the first thing. You've got to get through it. And if there's going to be a split or a big thing, well, you just hope you're in front where you're going to get time on your teammates. You're not wishing bad on your competitors. Of course, wishing bad luck or misfortune on your competitors, but that's just the first week. And going back to the team on paper that we had in 2011, we didn't have a team in the mountains. But I was so cruisy and easy just getting through all that stuff on the flat, because I had Quinciata, Bugart, then on my wheel I had Hincapie, then behind him I had Mael Monard and Steve Marabito, in case George failed or something, all just ready to go. And so I had Quincy and Bugart getting me through. I normally had one in front of me if need, and the rest behind me, because that was one thing as a team leader. I was always trying to be as economic with my team as possible, because I'm trying to be as economic with my own legs, because in case something goes wrong and you've got to get everyone in the front, you want them fresh and ready. But anyway, going through all that flat stuff, I had a fantastic team. So I just cruised through all that. So when I got to the climb and it had to be me, I was ready to go. And that was where having a George Hincapie, I could actually change the way I raced my tour. It was like, I can actually just relax, because I have full faith and confidence that he's going to look out for me, and he's going to deliver me at the bottom of the Mur de Bretagne or that left corner where I know I've got to be, and follow from there. I'm just going to follow Contador. I'm just going to follow, we know who's going to attack, and I'm just going to follow them. And then I've just got to be able to come around them. And that was, for me, that though these became a bit my speciality, was these stages in the first week. Going to what it's actually like in the first week, since I've stopped racing, even my teammates and so on who continued racing, and some have stopped, have said there seems to have become less and less respect within the peloton. There's more pushing and shoving and spitting on the other guys, maybe with the COVID thing, the spitting things stopped, I hope, throwing bottles in the middle of the peloton and things like that. And the feed zones are still a mess, people passing on the ride in the feed zone. When I was a stagiaire, I remember getting yelled at in my first races in Italy by Johan Museo and Mario Cipollini, I think, for passing on the right in a feed zone. I was like, and this is back in like 1999. I never passed on the right in the feed zone for the rest of my life. But then you come in as an established rider with 15 grand tours in your legs or something, and some neo-pros chopping under you, nearly breaking your arm as you're taking a feed bag from your soigneur. You're like, what the hell? And you're not allowed to yell at them because you get fined. Hey, buddy. And then... So there's that aspect of it, but then what I think that's a little bit the unknown, untalked about point, I suppose, in the nervousness of the first week. There's all this excitement about the tour. There's from the crowd, from the media, and the media attention. But there's also this, everyone knows it's going to be nervous. Everyone knows there's going to be crashes. So people get nervous, and that makes people crash. So people get even more nervous. So you're creating this whole, its own circle of danger. So it's really, can you please put my headphones back together? This is Aidan. And so that creates its own, when you're riding a bike and you're tense, if it rains, people get more nervous because they know it's crashes, but they're tense, you don't control the bike as well. And that just creates crashes. So people become more nervous, which creates more crashes, which it just goes on and on. And then we're seeing more teams taking the opportunities in crosswinds and so on, which is great to watch. But
is a stage like the last two nights almost more stressful and more hard for a GC rider than like a Tourmalet day? Would you rather a Tourmalet day than one of the ones last night?
At least on the Tourmalet or the Galibier, if you haven't got the legs, you're not going to do it. It's going to be on your own fault. Yep. You can do everything right that you're doing there, but the two crashes on the first day, they happened right at the front. Tony Martin hit that. Was that some lady had a sign, "Hello, Grandma and Grandpa," and he's like second, and on the second row at the front of the peloton. It's like, where better place can you be? Where it's hopefully going to be. So how safe and more professional a thing can you do? they happen right at the front. So there's nothing you can do. It's like 80 guys crashing you. It doesn't matter how good a bike handler you are. If someone's bike's hitting you on the head or something, there's nothing that you can do. So those ones are just crazy. What also happens is after sort of a week, people get tired. People get too tired to get to be nervous because they just start getting tired. But then what also I see what happens in the Grand Tour at about day 10 to 12 is people start to get mentally really fatigued. So they start having sort of stupid crashes just for lapse in concentration. I'm a bit tired now. They run into a traffic island or something. And so you see a few crashes there in the middle of the week. And then the third week, everyone's just a zombie and they get on with it.
And plus stage one, it seemed like all 20 teams wanted their trains. It seemed like everyone thought they had the winner in their team.
Yeah, there's 160 in the peloton now, and there's everyone wants to be all 160 want to be from 10th to 20th position in the peloton. Yeah, that's not going to work, is
it? That kind of hierarchy that you talked about before, Cadel, not a hierarchy, but the level of respect that came from these kind of elder statesmen that had the opportunity, had the wins, that's just been thrown out the door. It seems like on every level. Now guys enter their pro careers and it's like, all right, you're the leader for this race. But as you said, it's kind of got a little bit of a negative element too, because you don't have the respect that flows up the ladder.
Yep, I agree. There's less and less respect, and the thing was because I raced with Cipollini in the early parts of my career, and I didn't like him in the peloton because he's yelling at you for this and that, and because he wants to get his photo taken or whatever, and things like this. But he created a certain amount of respect amongst the riders, and he was a bit of a peloton captain, and love him or loathe him, but this sort of it created a bit of a hierarchy, a bit of respect, and that's sort of become a bit lost now, like you said. And I see what as a rider, after a few years, you're sort of like what you become to realize is just try and treat riders well, because you never know next year who's going to be your teammate, who's going to be your roommate. Maybe you're going to be riding for that guy who's spitting on you, or vice versa. Maybe that guy who's spitting on you is going to be begging you for a contract next year, because me, who was involved in team selection, it's sort of like what goes around comes around. It seems like the new ones, the sport, don't seem to understand this and don't seem to get this. And as a GC leader, you're having a bad day, you've got the jersey or something, but maybe they're going to have a jersey in another race you're at and you're having a good day and they're having a bad day or whatever. A little favor, a little helping someone out, or being a bit kind on them, being the gentlemanly racer. They sort of don't seem to realize this. I don't want to be the old guy in the peloton saying the young don't understand, but a certain level of respect and experience for those who've been there and done it before, I think we have to have in life.
Max, stage 2 last night, we saw a masterclass from one of the vans.
Yes.
Did you know what he was doing when he went on the first climb, the first time up the Mur de Bretagne? He went on the attack, and it just looked a little bit off, and on a few points.
Well, I was listening to Keno in the call, and when he only got sort of that 7-second gap and held it, that wasn't the Van der Poel that I've been watching this last 2 seasons. And Keno said maybe it's because he's at the Tour and it's the first time he's at Tour. It's a different league, the Tour. And I was sitting there going, no, I still think the one-day classics are hard enough, and he's ready to go. And he just held that 7-second gap. And in my head, I'm like, is he going for King of the Mountain points and then dropping back into the group? I didn't realize there was bonus seconds. It's absolute mastermind and so much confidence. How much confidence can you have to think I'm going to attack on both times up the climb? That's amazing. And it turns out he didn't need the bonus seconds because he managed to drop Alaphilippe on the line anyway. But it meant so much for him to get yellow on that stage. He would have been disappointed with stage 1. And I tuned in for the Tour to see Van der Poel this year, and I'm glad I got to see what I saw stage last night.
Unbelievable. Cadel, you've won up that climb. So we're talking about 2011. You won the Tour de France, but you also won stage 4 up that climb. What do you need to know about that climb? And were you looking at it, analyzing what you've experienced in your racing career as well last night?
Did you go up twice and attack it in the first time as well?
Exactly, Max. I wanted to go to your answer first because Max is I've ridden 9 Tour de France's. Max is a much better. Max is a more experienced Tour de France Grand Tour watcher than I am. I was exactly the same as you. I'm like, what? Funnily enough, I was doing some TV stuff during the race, and I had my 2011 Tour book here. So I've got it up here on the bookshelf here. Yeah. And so I was looking through it because I think we only went up at once. Let me check. I've got the book here. I probably could have looked up on the internet earlier, but I'm old school with the book. But I don't have the book for this year. And so I'm like, I was exactly the same, Max. What's he doing? He's not just testing his legs at 20K to go. And then, he had the bonus seconds. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then, to have that confidence, and he rides with this air of confidence as well. It's it's sort of a bit of a little area between that grey line of self-confidence and overconfidence, but he sort of rides with that air about him. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But then, of course, it all came together. Like you said, Alaphilippe didn't make the show. Wasn't the Alaphilippe of yesterday. Didn't get a time bonus, so we didn't need it. But in the end, be sure to do it. And then, what I really liked about both the 2 stages, it's so nice to see these. Yesterday, the first day one, apart from the crashes and so on, Alaphilippe coming, he lost his father a year before. He's become a dad just recently to go and win that stage and made the gesture towards his new daughter. The fact that he's just become a father, and then that Van der Poel could make this gesture towards his grandfather, whom he lost a year ago. Is that correct? Who'd never wore the yellow jersey himself. So it was so nice to see these emotions outside of sport, and that's I think that's part of also why sport can be so special in society today, because it's sometimes driven by emotions and other things beyond the the normal in sport. The Mur de Bretagne. It's if I don't want to go on too long about it. It's very short. You get there, it's like a wall in the sense it's a flat run in, and boof, it goes up. I thought the climb yesterday was being longer, nearly as steep at the start. Mur de Bretagne, in 2011, I just remember going through the 1K to go sign, and Hushov was there in the group in front of me. And I'm like, should I bother sprinting in this? And the next thing, at 500 meters to go, I think we were 10 or 12 left in the group. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in for the chance here. You think it's going to be a bunch sprint. Next thing you know, there's only climbers left. It's because it's really puts the sprinters on the limit. I made 2 picks on the commentary I was involved with yesterday, and one was Michael Matthews, because how good he went up the first day on a longer climb against climbers. For him being the sprinter he is, I thought, well, if he can do that on the longer climb, he can do better on the Mur de Bretagne. And then and I also picked Geraint Thomas, who lost 10 or 20 seconds yesterday, which aren't looking anywhere near where I expected them to be. So I was way off on both picks there.
It's a tour of romantic stories. You're right, Cadel, and there's only one more that needs to happen. It's the Cav. That'll be a romantic story. Tony Martin will probably come out and win the time trial now.
Tony Martin's hit the deck already once. That's right. And there are 2 stages now. I think that leads into these next 2 stages. I think I spent a bit of time with Cav when being involved with BMC and when it was Quebeco Dimension Data moving to BMC bikes. I spent some time with him, and I saw a few things that didn't indicate well, and then it was controversial. They didn't take Cav to the tour. How could you not take a 4-time tour winner? But then he's gone to Quick Step. He's transformed as a rider. He's won some races. He's going to have a stronger team around him. But I think Cav's best opportunities are going to come in the next 2 days. But of course, we're all cheering for someone else, because we've all got our favourite Aussie sprinter to cheer for, I think.
Correct.
Will you actually get to the tour this year, Cadel, in person?
Normally with all these closures and everything, I'm having my first trip for a long time. I think we're going to Paris. Normally, that's what the plan is. of the last 18 events or something I've been booked to do, about 17 of them have been cancelled, one of which was meant to be in Girona last week. I'm here at home. I was home last week rather than in Girona as planned. Hopefully the tour the tour trip goes ahead. It'd be nice to be there, but I've only had one vaccination, so I'll be being cautious and washing my hands and all those things on the same time. But normally I'll be in Paris, yes.
I'm interested in your thoughts on, say, like you talked about, Matthews was so good on stage one. Alaphilippe was obviously exceptional on stage one. Mathieu had a bad run in. He wasn't in great position into the opening stage, but then was dominant on the second stage. Is he just that much better, or like how did that dynamic shift of performance, do you think?
Yeah, I look at it in a couple of aspects. If we look at the three riders, where Van der Poel, Michael Matthews, and Alaphilippe, well, all three of them are big one-day race winners. Alaphilippe is a guy who's shown he can do GC at the tour by holding the yellow jersey. I'd say he's more a one-day rider who can do GC rather than a GC rider. But the first opening stage, I look at someone like Matthews and I think, as a one-day rider, you went in there, you saw your opportunity and you absolutely gave it everything. But that's the one-day race mentality. You 110%, everything you've got, you've put it out on the line. As a GC rider, though, you're sitting, you're taking your time, you're putting in 99% because tomorrow you've got to do it again. 99%, 99%. 95%, whatever it is, you're always holding back just a little bit. Whereas as a one-day rider, you have to have this different mentality. Just turn yourself inside out and put everything out on the line. So I wonder, was Michael Matthews, or on the other side, Van der Poel? Alaphilippe was really bad position as well, as was Van der Poel leading into the bottom of on the first day. Alaphilippe came back, he made up a lot of space, and then Dries Devenins took him up, and from then he sort of, I suppose, he saw a bit of an opportunity, probably had a bit of momentum because he was moving a bit quicker. Well, I'll just keep it and go with it for whatever reason. Was it a training thing? Is Van der Poel needing to get going, and one day of racing brings him into his best, or was he just, it's his first Tour de France, right? Because to go to the Tour, I've not raced a Flanders, I've not raced a Paris-Roubaix, but going to the Tour, it's really something else. So was he just taking time to get used to that? I'm not sure. I have to say, on the other side too, we're speaking about these riders who are winning, Poel and Roglic, second and third on the second day. These are guys these are not pure GC riders. They both got a Liège to their name, but they're really sharp and ready.
I've always, every time I've been able to talk to a cyclist, I've asked this question, Cadel, because I'm, from a football point of view, we're always trying to get selfish people to go selfless. Like, football's always been a team sport, and there's this ever line, Neil Danaher talks about it now, the selfish v selfless people, and we obviously want to be a team full of selfless players. And I see it in cycling. I see it sometimes. Some teams don't get it right a lot of the time, but you see it in cycling, and I'm sure when you were a domestique early on in your career, I'm pretty sure you rode for Jan Ulrich at some point. There's times where you do have to be selfless. Is there a way that either you in 2011 reward George Hincapie in front of everyone for the role he played, and that'll encourage riders to be more selfless? Like, how do they reward the domestiques behind closed doors to make them keep tipping in and keep being that lead domestique?
Yeah, I like the way you refer that, selfish versus selfless, and because in cycling but you have to actually switch between the two, because your team deliver you to the front. But if I give an example of the stage to Galibier in the 2011 Tour, I was all on my own then, so I had to be selfish, just do it.
Yeah.
Do it for me. I was doing it for my teammates, of course, because what they'd done to get me to that point. But you're all on your own then, and that's where I think in cycling we have so much to learn from a team like a sport like AFL, or probably soccer or something as well. But at a certain point, you're completely on your own. Whereas I don't think your moments on your own in AFL are. I'm thinking you have your penalties and things.
Very rarely.
you have those moments, but it's not an individual time trial for an hour where your entire 3 weeks GC counts or something like that, where it's your moments in cycling of having to deliver completely on your own far greater. Just going through to the having been a rider in the past, my way of being a team leader was I learned from working from others. I would never say to a rider. I learned this from in my first year at full-time on the road. I rode at Mapei alongside Bettini and Oscar Freire. And Oscar would never ask you to ride on the front. He would never say anything. Oscar, are you okay? Is everything? Yeah. Oscar, you're still here. Oh, we'll close the gap. Do you want to do the sprint? No. We'll go and close the gap. We'll do this because I think he's going to sprint. But he would never ask you to do it. But the fact that he didn't ask you to do it, you wanted to do it, you thought you should do it, so you do it, and you'd be more committed. And it was the same with Paolo Bettini. He'd never say, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. He was never the dictator, this, that, sort of like. But I found in my own self, as opposed to when I was at Telecom and, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and you're told to do this, you're told to do that. Okay, I'll do it because I have to, and I'll do it. I'll try and get a bit more out of myself. But I'd get 100% out of myself, but I wouldn't get 110% out of myself. But for Berto and Oscar and these guys, I'd happily give 110% of myself. And so that taught me as a leader to I'd ask if we can do this, if you can bring me here, I think we can do something. If we can do this, if we can do that, I think we can do something. I didn't want to put pressure on myself, but I also didn't want to put pressure on my teammates either. So, and then it was sort of up to them to deliver, but then also prove to them that you were worthy to work for them, prove them by your results, of course. But then on the other side, I've always tried to be one who looked out for my teammates. And we're thinking Brent Buchwalder's still racing here, right? We mentioned before. I was just speaking with him yesterday, the day before. And someone who I always try to look out for. So I'd always, like, when he gets told off by get in someone's way or something, someone to start swearing. So I'd go up behind them and give them an absolute mouthful. Like being a rider who had some, I'd go out and I'd defend them. I'd go out and defend them, but he feels good because you have someone who's giving, there's this little hierarchy in I'm a more important rider than you are, you're more important than him, he's more important than me. So that when in the peloton, if you go there and you have the rainbow stripes on your jersey or something, and you go and give someone a mouthful so that everyone doesn't say anything, not many people saying much against you. But so I would look out for them in that regard. And then, of course, when I won the tour, I had a reward for all the riders and their families and things, and but things outspoken without the race, and that was sort of to show that I was looking out for them.
With that pressure of being the leader, we see. I'm going to ask you about the Aussies in a second, but Lucas Hamilton, who's been given his first chance to be GC for the Aussie team, and then he loses time on the first 2 stages. I'm sure that happened to you at some point. How do you go getting back on the bus knowing that all 7 riders were riding for you and you weren't able to get done to a level that you would have wanted to?
Yeah, well, going into the tour, and they were talking about Lewis Hamilton. I was reading Lucas Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton, who's another guy in another sport. Lucas Hamilton. I was thinking, this is a lot of expectations on him. I hope he's got a good guy to shepherd him through this first week. And then so that's where I'm looking to some of the Aussie guys. And I think it's, to be honest, it's him not losing time is more the responsibility of the other guys than him. Of course, he's got to be there, he's got to get there, but there's a couple of rouleurs on that climb who aren't going to be there in the mountains. This is their chance to give to what's going to be GC for their team, and that's sort of up to them a bit, I think. So this is I had someone like George Hincapie as a teammate get me through these things, so it's maybe easy for me to say. Mickey Shah was someone who, in my mind, is one of the best domestics in the peloton today, because he learned from George Hincapie. But having those guys get through you, that's there's a couple of guys on Bike Exchange whose the best thing they can contribute to the team is to get Lucas through. Having said that, I think Lucas did really well on the first day. He lost a little bit of time on the stage to Mur de Bretagne, but he's still good. For me, Jack Haig is doing absolutely awesome there.
You're too nice. Esteban Chavez should have been waiting for Lucas Hamilton.
We have a very unbiased opinion on Lucas Hamilton here at the Social Club, Cadel.
Okay, all right. Well, I can guess how and why, but no, I don't know Lucas personally very well. So, but
what about? So he's at like just over a minute down. So it's not catastrophic. It's not like he's at a Ben O'Connor who crashed severely on the first stage and lost a mountain of time. What kind of approach mentally does Lucas take from here on? What does he need to do? Or does he need to focus on the GC? Does he need to focus on finding that guy to hitch his wagon to? Does he need to find that George Hincapie?
I think what advice I'd be giving to him, and this is maybe something I should have made contact with him before the race. I'm just checking the classification here because I know being a minute down can sound like a lot, but also if you take out all the riders who aren't going to be there after the first mountain stage. So at 39 to 28 seconds, yesterday, General, I would be looking, even if you don't have, I don't know how they are on the road. Stuff you don't see on TV is how well the team's looking after him through the flat stages. But I would be looking at the more experienced GC riders, picking a few guys as point of references who have the experience, who know when to save energy, know when to expend energy. And so I speak about my period of racing, I had a bit of as point of references, say, Andreas Kloden was quite experienced, but he was really good at hanging back and not expending anything. But if he was at the front, make sure you're at the front, because he was one of the. But then you had other guys who were way too nervous, always in front too much, and you said, "Well, they're in front, but they're too nervous." And then Sam Sanchez, when I rode for him at the Vuelta, I was like, "Come on, get to the front. It's going to split. Come on." He's like the most laid back of all the GC guys, who's probably made a podium at a Grand Tour. So you have these sort of points of reference, and I would be using those and the big teams, of course, looking when they're moving where they are as points of reference, and just keeping an eye on those. And it's quite, it looks like an absolute mess, the peloton, but there's a bit of methodology when you start to look at it in this respect, and then you see someone being lazy one day, they lose time, and the next day they're nervous as hell because their director's in their ear at them, stay in front, and they're all nervous and they're right in the front too much, and you also got to take that into the equation. But that's what I'd be looking at in terms of Lucas's performance. But then also looking at him at 1:16, okay, Soli Crudobello is ahead of him, who's clearly not going to be. I don't know I can't even pronounce this Astana rider's name, so I don't know who he is, so I'll respect. He's not going to be there, but then, okay, Nibali, Fuglsang, Geraint Thomas, of course, Carapaz. Well, within 45 seconds, he's got the guy who's Ineos's best guy to win the Tour, and their second best guy, he's right there with them. If we take out 26 seconds Uran, 26 seconds Chavez, 26 seconds Quintana, these are all guys who have podiumed and may podium in this Tour still. He's still in a great position. 26 seconds, Jack Haig. Wilco Kellerman, underrated rider, I think. 24 seconds, and then it's 14, 13. He's a minute 3 off Pogacar.
Yep.
It's still right in there, but having lost the Tour de France in 2007 by 23 seconds, I could say, well, it's all over. But at the same time, it's he's for a first Tour, he's sitting really, really well.
Do you get royalties, Cadel? Sorry, Alex.
Yeah.
Do you get royalties for every time Wout van Aert, Van der Poel, or Tom Pidcock win a race because you were the first mountain bike cycling cross guy to the peloton?
No, but do you know how much insult and criticism I took for being a mountain biker coming to the road?
Now it's the on-trend cool thing to do.
Yeah. When I did it, it was like, who are you? That's not a sport. What's that mountain bike thing? It's funny. The ones when I came to the road, it was bizarre. This is also the change in mentality that when I came to the road, mountain bike, you don't know what you're doing, and this and that. And also speaking about the selfish. As a mountain bike, it's a very individual sport. You have to be quite selfish. You're in a team, but maybe your teammate's your best your biggest competitor to win the World Cup or something, as it was with me with Christoph Sauser in the last years of my career. Anyway, another podcast. You have to make this change in mentality, switching to the team. But then when I came across to the road, the few road riders who'd done a mountain bike race, they go, I did a mountain bike race. Oh, it's hard. The ones who'd done a mountain bike race all understood that it was really hard. But I always looked at it as mountain biking, cyclocross, and like track was for the road, for riders like Jay Sweet, Robin McHugh, and Stuart O'Grady were inroads to the top level of the Tour de France. Jay Sweet didn't make the tour, but anyway. Cyclocross, BMX, mountain bike are great pathways into the sport, and whether you end up going to the road or you stay in mountain bike, that doesn't matter. But also, I'm here to promote. My thing is to promote cycling and health and well-being, and whether they're playing footy or whether young people are taking up cycling. For me, it's as long as people are healthy and well, that's probably in the end. I'm happy, but of course, cycling is my sport, and coming from mountain bike, coming to the road, I feel for the guys who come from the road, and I certainly feel very proud when they're seeing Van Aert and Van der Poel duking it out in the cyclocross World Cups, and then they're at Flanders or Roubaix or something. That's nice to see.
What was when you signed that first road contract? Was the team like, all right, you're a road rider now, no mountain bike, no nothing else?
My pathway came through. I raced with the Volvo Canada mountain bike team, and part of the thing going there was I had the opportunity to race with the Seiko team, which is why I actually did a few races and stagiaired with Seiko, because it was Seiko Cannondale connection. And I think Cannondale's plan was me to continue doing road and mountain bike, with doing both. And then I was still under 23 when I was doing this. So I was racing under 23. I did the stagiaire with the pros, which was when Cipollini and so on were yelling at me for riding on the pass, or riding on the right in the feed zone, passing on the right in a feed zone. And then in 2000, I through injury and things, I didn't do the road racing that I normally did with under 23 national team. And it was the Olympics in Sydney. So of course I was quite concentrated towards that. And then afterwards, let's see what happens. And I wasn't under 23 anymore. So at that point I was sort of wondering, what's going to go on here? And then 2001, I did as Cannondale wished. I was racing road and mountain bike. And I had 110, 120 hours in an aeroplane, 40,000 Ks on my car in Europe, 30,000 Ks on my car in Australia, going back and forth. And I was just like, I was exhausted. Anyway, the whole period through this, it was the night before the World Championships in Lisbon in 2001, the Pro Worlds. Mappe came to me and said, would you like to come to us and develop as a Grand Tour rider? And I was like, hang on a second, here's the biggest team in cycling asking me if I want to have a second career in sport. I was having a few issues with the mountain bike team and things internally, and all of a sudden this was like, this is a breath of fresh air. And at 2001, 24 years old, it was almost like, I've got a chance to have a second career in sport. It was a dream come true that I could have one career as a professional in sport. Now I can have two. And that's when I went to the road, and I was like, okay, my mountain bike, it goes in the garage. It stays there, and it's still sitting there now.
I'm waiting for Manchester United just to come knocking. Maybe goalkeeper Cadel. I could do something.
Well, couldn't you switch to basketball? Reading through your history?
Yeah, potentially the height in basketball. Alex, I know you've got probably a few more questions, so I'm going to get my last one out just to. Now, my biggest fan, I know you had said you're a listener of the podcast. I'm not sure if you've worked out who my biggest cycling fan is. I'm a lover of your former teammate who's just retired this week in Tejay Van Garderen. And now, unfortunately, never got to what he was expected to be. Did you think he was going to be a GC contender? Did you think he was going to win a Tour de France by the time you left and packed up at BMC?
He surprised me. Okay, so what you see on the outside of TV is as opposed to being on a team with someone, seeing them under the moments of pressure, and as I'm sure you well know, Max. We see a sports person's true character come out when they're under real pressure, don't we? I've seen all aspects of Tejay. So he really surprised me with his performance in was it 2015. He was sitting in third in the third week of the tour. 2015.
Yep.
And 2015, and 3 days before getting to Paris or something, riding the stage, he stopped, got in the car, and went home. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. He didn't. But speaking to like Mickey Shah and these guys who rode with Tejay, but also rode with me, they're like, oh, we've been working our asses off 2.5 weeks, and he's got in the car and went home. He didn't even say goodbye. It's like that. Until that moment, that performance surprised me. But he always. He was always good when he was the second guy, and he could come out okay into the result, but to have he could do the physical side, he had it, but the pressure and the expectation he couldn't handle it. And that in my mind was what was going to hold him back. And his years following on from that sort of disappointed me a bit, to be honest.
That's exactly the answer I wanted. Thank you.
Do you have to head off, Max?
No. I'm just expecting you to wind up with some hard hitting ones to finish.
I'm pleased you got that in. Cadel, I remember last year we talked about you were close with the ROG. So we've talked about the POG a little bit. Let's go to the ROG. Have you got any intel for us on his training camp? He looks like in super condition, like we touched on. He's just been going head to head with the ROG and the POG, just always thereabouts. And Jack Haig not far behind, but those two look exceptional. Have you got any intel for us on how the ROG is coming?
I just occasionally, I was speaking regularly with the ROG, or Rogler they call him.
What do you call him?
Primoz. When I write Primox, when I talk about him, I call him Rogler because that's the name they call him in Italy. But and I was having a fair bit of communications with him and so on. But when I was watched that tour and I watched him and his performance, I watched that time trial, I felt like I was losing the Tour de France. I felt so. I don't know how to describe it. But I felt like I'd lost the Tour de France. I was like, I was going to win it, and I lost it. I didn't speak for him for a long time and things, and I didn't know what to say. And
you finally worked out how Andy Schleck was feeling this whole time.
Well, Andy got given another one later. So okay. Anyway, but having been in that position a couple of times before myself, you're going to win the Tour. You're going to win the Tour. Oh, you fell short. Oh, you're a loser. I was second twice at the Tour in that sort of situation. But anyway, so I haven't had much communication with him, but I'm not one. I'm sort of also becomes number one. In the meantime, he becomes number one in the world. He's winning Liège. He's winning the Vuelta. And so I every now and then I said, watching from a distance, hope everything's going well. And, how's your little boy going? And but I just see him in a fantastic position this year. I see him very solid. Another Vuelta win, a little bit more experience. The Tour experience from last year. He's not going to make that same mistake again. I wouldn't say made many errors, but if any errors, you had a pocket car that came out and grew wings on the very day he needed to have wings to turn things around. But I just see Primoz very solid. He's had that long period without racing. I think you spoke about in your podcast the other day, which I think I was going back into my memory bank. Could be wrong here, but the last rider to do that program was Nairo Quintana, who had a similar approach. Raced into the Garderen Classics, went away to altitude training camps and so on, and then came back and did a great tour. What impresses me with Primoz is, one, he has a team that's stronger, even more experienced than last year. He's had this period out of racing, and he's right there getting bonus seconds in the first 2 days. Fantastic. As long as hasn't come in too sharp, which is I don't know these first week, how important the first week's becoming. I don't know if that exists in coming in too good to the start of the Tour. I don't know if that exists anymore. but whether that costs him in the third week or time will tell. Beyond that, I see he's in a perfect position, and I actually wanted just to send him a message or something. I was like, just from the outside, you look like you're absolutely in the best position ever to have the best tour, your best tour ever this year would be my words to him if I were to speak with him now. But no, I've just been following him from a distance, and he spent a lot of time in Tejay in the altitude camp. I think he's sort of made it a bit his home away from home. So I suspect he knows all those climbs and all the downhills as well. And that's that'll be interesting to watch when we get into that area of France.
There's nothing wrong with a one-time tour winner, Cadel, but if you had Robert Hessink, Vingegaard, Sepp Kuss, and Kruijswijk as domestiques for you, do you reckon you could have won 4 or 5?
I'd like to think I could have done a bit more, but sometimes the way they go, you'd sometimes find yourself on the radio in a moment of feeling not so good. He's up a bit, guys. Oh no, they have. Sepp Kuss. It's nice that there's a real solid American rider out there being in the front and real. Yeah, I like him. I don't know him at all, but he looks from the outside looks real solid class rider.
Speaking of strong teams, Ineos on the other side of the table too has an extremely strong lineup. Have you ever been in that situation, Cadel, where they've come in with just a team approach? There's lots of leaders. They're starting to kind of find a hierarchy, but there's no clear leader.
I suppose I had one moment in 2012 talking about Tejay van Garderen where he was ahead of me on GC. It was sort of strange. There was this. From one day to the next, I was team leader. I was team. Oh, no, you're do whatever you can. TJ's team leader, and it was a bit of came from the management, and for me, it came as a bit of a spit in the face, to be honest. I've been in that position, and also when I was not having a good tour, I think it was in 2009. I had being on a Belgian team when a Belgian rider on a Belgian team coming 5th is better than an Australian rider, a Belgian team going for the win in terms of sponsorship value. Or so when hang on, Vanderpants. Sorry, I've gone blank for the name. Van der Broek. Brook means pants, I think. In Dutch. Brook is like shorts or braces or something, isn't it? When Van der Broek was moving into a good position on GC and going for the KOM jersey, there was all of a sudden, it used to be about you, now it's not anymore. I suppose I was in a little bit of that, and also back when I was telecom, I hope I go to the tour, or it comes here, forget about it. you might get a start at the Vuelta, 2004.
Yeah.
Have I been a team that's so strong like that? No, and that's where I say that we spoke about before. Brailsford's just been. What I find really interesting about David Brailsford is he's a physiologist, but he's also a sports psychologist, which is a bit of a rare combination. And then he's bought this, and I think also, Maxie, you might find this interesting, where he's bought this selfishness, selfless to a team. And to be able to manage that, it's just been extraordinary, I think, to have guys so good. Richie, who podiumed at the Tour last year, to be there committed riding on the start of just to be able to motivate someone and convince them to do that day in, day out of the stage race. Just to be able to do that is, I find, extraordinary. And chapeau to Brailsford. That to me is one of the most extraordinary things he's done as a team manager, discounting the things that money can buy.
If only Movistar could have a Brailsford. If only Movistar could have a Brailsford, and then Hilaire, Valverde, Massa, and Lopez won't all be going for the same stage, Alex.
Good observation. In the past, they were all with Nara, Quintana, but a Spanish sponsor when you have Valverde and Anzu and that whole thing. I only see them from the outside.
Yes,
it's good for Netflix's production team. Cadel, did you happen to catch Max's top 34 on GC that he rolled out? He's been known for some lengthy predictions on where people are gonna end up. I'm not expecting a reel off a top 34, but it would be good to get a top 3 to 5 on top 3 or top 5 on who you think's gonna win this Tour de France?
Yesterday I was doing with SBS talking about Geraint Thomas, thinking it was going to be a great tour, but looking at him 41 seconds down, well, just in front of Nibali and Fuglsang, that's not looking quite as good as it was. Carapaz being Ineos's first guy, now going in, of course, what I thought going into the tour, I had Carapaz and Thomas up there, and I was like, going into the tour, I thought, are they going to fill the podium here? Now I'm more two Slovenians on the podium, and well, I think Primoz, like I said, he's the best one. I will put Primoz first, Pog second, and third, Carapaz for 1, 2, 3 on the podium, and then nipping on the heels, I think we might see. It'd be great to see an Iran. I'll give top 6 or 8. Geraint Thomas, top 6 or 8 again. Fuglsang, I don't think he's ever cracked the 8, so I put him in the 8 to 10 range. Lucas, Jack will be there in that mix there. I think realistically, I hope better, but I think he'll be in that mix there, and so I'm missing sort of 4, 5, and 6, aren't I? Quintana. It'd be nice to have a French guy in that period there, but
David Gaudu.
Gaudu, you think? Gaudu. So far, so good. Not many uphill finishes, but no long time trials this year. They speak about 2 30K time trials. Was listening to the Swiss commentary yesterday about the Mur de Bretagne was once used for a time trial stage of the tour many years ago. Many years ago, when the time trials were a bit longer, they had a time trial there. It was 139 individual time trial, 139 kilometers. 230K time trial sounds like a warm-up.
Well, Lopez would have lost the tour by 2 hours.
He would have been eliminated outside the time limit. Funny, years ago when I was moving house, I was cleaning up this stuff out of someone's house who I was moving into, and I found like a 1953 Tour de France handout. I've got it here somewhere. You look through the stage distances. It's ridiculous. I'll have to dig it out, but the shortest stage is like 280 Ks or something. Crazy distances.
An actual Tour of France.
Oh yeah, it was like when you go to the race, when you come to my race, we give you a start list and a little rider favourites bio and so on. This was like the pamphlet that you get, or comes in the newspaper or something. And I'll have to dig it out here. Don't know where I archive that away. I hope I'll put it somewhere safe. But I'll dig it out. But what amazed me looking through it was just how the shortest stage was 200 plus kilometres. So that many years ago, when the bikes weren't as good, the roads weren't nearly as good. And sorry, going back to the time trials, some of these climber types, they don't have as many mountaintop finishes, but they don't have as many time trial kilometres to. Like you referred to, Lopez might have been OTC, was it outside of the time cut on a time trial? He might still be in with the fight. So the time trials are not going to be so eliminating for the climbers, and there's a few opportunities for those risk takers, like on the descents. Like I'm thinking we'll see attacks on that. Might make some time gains by Rogler and even Nibali, who's not hasn't shown to be a favourite for the win, but he'll certainly be taking back some time on the downhills as well.
Yeah. Any final questions, Max?
No, that's about it. I've hit my hard hitting on. Hey, Cadel, you're sitting here 10 years post 2011. You're 5-6 years retired. Are you happy? I know you're based in Switzerland.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm over here because I have a 10-year-old son who lives just over the border in Italy. That's my reason why I'm not. I'm in a different time zone to you guys. But yeah, thanks very much, Max. I have to say I'm delighted. It's nice to be speaking about the tour. So I have a bit of a Tour de France themed office because most of my little Zoom conferences and things, a year of lockdown, my office is set up for these discussions and those of the Tour de France. But No, all being said, yes, I have to say I'm very happy. Thanks, Max. I've got two great little boys who occupy most of my time these days, which has just been great, because being a dad and having all this time with those guys has been fantastic. And to be here discussing with not just an AFL player, but no, the George Hincapie of AFL today, because looking through there seemed to be this funny wave of strength and success when you were playing. So we're looking through your history of coming through the ranks, and no, a bit to be able to discuss that, the sport today, where it's going, the interest that it draws from someone like from yourself, from another sport, Max, to the broader public, and where the sport is today. I have to say I'm sort of proud of what I did 10 years ago, happy what I did. I had my chance, gave it everything, and so I stepped away from the professional racing without many regrets. And now I'm just happy to enjoy the ride, look at it, and like all of us, watch the race with a great deal of enthusiasm, and go ahead with life. And of course, still love riding, but no one's expecting me to do these 7 watts per kilogram efforts up every climb I do now. So it's I don't force them upon myself to do those efforts anymore either.
I've got one last question for you, Cadel. We've got as of 3 or 4 weeks ago, a brand new partner, the TAC, on board as a new sponsor of the podcast, as part of The Road Belongs to Us All campaign that we all play our part. We all do our bit to make a safe environment out there. You've ridden maybe everywhere. You've ticked off, I imagine, most countries in the world. What is there one thing that you can think of that makes a safe road environment, an ingredient that makes a place so fruitful for cyclists and car drivers and pedestrians and all of the above?
Well, of course, the cyclists in, we would say, are lights. But I'll say, as the car driver, the passenger on a bus, the respect. I remember my Vic Roads driver handbook. To drive on the roads is a privilege, not a right. You always got to remember that, I think. And as road users, whether we're a truck driver, a car driver, a pedestrian, a cyclist, it's our privilege to use the public roads. We have to respect everyone on those. If you don't want to respect them, go and hire a helicopter or stay at home.
Another, I know that's a good one to finish on, Cadel, but another one of our podcast friends, Cohen de Court, he actually got hit by a car going for a training ride and had all 4 fingers amputated. Yeah. Yeah,
like he normally was going to the tour, and he hasn't got any fingers. Like he's got a thumb and a forefinger. It's like, oh, you can still ride, yeah, but gear changes.
That's crazy.
Getting through that messy peloton, the washing machine there, through the first week in those Bretagne roads, so with 2 fingers. Yeah. But no, so if we go and look back at what Mick Doohan did with his career after he had lost some fingers, it was pretty impressive. Maybe he has to look to Mick Doohan for some inspiration.
Nasty. Well, Cadel, thank you very much for your time. It's very generous of you to come on the podcast. You're always a very special guest to have. So we thank you for your time. And
thanks.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the tour.
Thanks very much for having. Great to speak with you guys. Great to see you again, Max. All the best for you and the success going forward.
Thank you, Cadel.
How many more weeks away are we from?
We've got 8 more games. We're sitting on top of the ladder currently.
8 more. This is how far away I am from the other side of the world. All the best with that, and hopefully we'll, before those 8 more games, maybe we should speak before I leave to go to Paris.
Might have to get you some inspiration. Get up in the footy club and give us some inspiration going into the finals.
Well, on the team unity thing, I'd be coming to learn from you guys, but on the probably on the toughing it out and not giving up side of things, I might be able to offer some insights.
Beautiful. Thanks, mate.
No, thank you. All the best, Max. Thanks for having me along, Alex. Thanks for having me, guys, and we'll speak again soon. Stay safe,
Always
everyone.
a pleasure. Thanks.